work at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies. We actually lead a project called A Sexual Culture of Justice, in which we focus on ending ways to end gender-based violence and also enact protections around LGBTI rights. And so what we do in our project is that we support a group of LGBTI organizations in Trinidad and Tobago, 7 organizations, 6 whom are formal partners for the Sexual Culture of Justice project. Of course, as you can imagine, people who were vulnerable before the pandemic are going to be more vulnerable during the pandemic, and particularly the impact of the lockdown, the social and economic impact. And so there have been a number of challenges that we've heard from members of the community, similarly experienced by so many, but in particular, employment challenges, of course, access to healthcare and social services, and trans persons in particular experience a number of different challenges. And so our work with the group of LGBTI organizations, what we've heard, community members have come to us and expressed disappointment in the government's response. In particular, that there have been gaps in addressing the needs of key populations and vulnerable communities that include trans persons, sex workers, and persons living with HIV. And so our organizations and this coalition, we've been working to fill those gaps. Well, the issues that have worried me most during this pandemic are thinking about those most vulnerable, people without shelter, people living paycheck to paycheck, daily wage earners, persons living with HIV or those who are immunocompromised, sex workers, migrants, and trans persons, and thinking about people who might have overlapping experiences. Also thinking about elders, persons living with disabilities, domestic workers. And so, I think those are the issues that have worried me the most, and in particular for the LGBTQI community, folks who are experiencing different kinds of economic challenges, but in particular for trans folks, it's not so simple to go to a government agency and access relief grants, because those forms can often not match someone's gender identity might not match the form, and they might have difficulty applying for that. Also, those who are doing informal work, like sex work, it's very difficult to apply for some of those relief grants because of those circumstances and not being eligible. So eligibility is an issue. And the other challenge for persons living with HIV, being able to access some of these grants, we have gotten reports of people not being able to get the help they need. And so what we've been doing is really trying to fill in those gaps and offer support for folks however we can. So what we're thinking about are what are the best ways to help folks get access to social services that are available to them, and also assist folks who need very, very specific things. And so that could be access to healthcare, it could be getting help with medication. And so we've been looking at ways to fundraise privately, but also be able to access and push around what are the government's, what are the specific ways in which people can access help through the grants and through Ministry of Social Development. So yes, across the region, we have heard from different organizations experiencing very similar things. I'm a part of a regional network of LGBTI organizations across the region. And also, one of the things that an organization called Outright International has done a survey across the region and other places across the world to look at some of the challenges, and the very same challenges that I mentioned: employment, access to healthcare and social services, and very specific challenges and vulnerabilities for trans persons and sex workers. And so, sex workers can be a variety of sexual orientations, but the fact is they are vulnerable because of the work that they do. And so we include them, and we're including them in our work as well. And a few of the other challenges that, of course, we have been discussing and mentioning already, that young people and children and women in particular living with abusers is a challenge across sexual orientation and gender identity. So again, those struggling before the pandemic and lockdown are struggling even more, and I think that's one of the things that we've been focusing on today. Well, some of the changes that I think we can make to create a new normal, or what the government has asked for suggestions and actions for the road to recovery. Specifically, CAISO Sex and Gender Justice, who I work with as well, we've submitted 2 recommendations. One that focuses on supporting civil society, and that is, we think, a very important recommendation that for the government to really think about how civil society needs to be supported through very clear recommendations that we've offered in our submission. The second submission that CAISO has offered is, we call it No Value Left Behind. And in this road to recovery, we have to remember that there are folks who have lots of talent and are amazing and could contribute in very significant ways to our new economy, but are not protected under the Equal Opportunity Act. And so this action is very clear. We feel like it's a very human rights focused and a very easy thing that the government can do, which is to amend the Equal Opportunity Act to include protections on the basis of sexual orientation or an LGBTI status. And so that's a very clear ask and action. And we have submitted those on behalf of CAISO Sex and Gender Justice. And we think that those are ways, those are specific actions for the road to recovery.